In this module, we will be talking about shapes, another element of art. Shapes have length and width, whereas form is three-dimensional. Shapes are a well-defined area usually made by closing a contour line. All shapes can be classified into two categories: geometric shapes and organic shapes. Geometric shapes are regular shapes, easy to recognize, such as square and circle. They are most commonly found in man-made objects and structures. In this artwork by an unknown artist, we can see mostly geometric shapes, such as houses and a bridge. L. Lissitzky's lithograph Proun 2b from Proun is a good example of an abstract piece of art made solely of geometric shapes. Notice how every shape can be easily described geometrically, such as rectangular-like or rhomboid-like. Here are a couple additional artworks exclusively made of right-angled geometric shapes. Piet Mondrian, the author of these two paintings, was a Dutch artist associated with De Stijl, a modern art movement that emerged in the Netherlands in the early 20th century. De Stijl stands for style, and it embraced abstraction, specifically basic geometric elements and colors. Non-geometric shapes or organic shapes don't follow rules, they are irregular. Organic shapes are usually found in nature, which is why landscapes will usually have more organic than geometric shapes. A few very common examples found in landscapes are leaves, flowers, clouds, trees, and mountains. Henri Matisse was known for mixing geometric and organic shapes. Here is a good example of this. Memory of Oceania, 1952, early 1953, mixes barely recognizable organic shapes with straight-angle geometric shapes. Also notice the lines at the bottom half of the painting. These aren't shapes yet. They are implied at most. The reason why is because these lines are open. They do not touch each other. Here is another example of how Matisse mixes very simple organic and geometric shapes to good effect. Notice the pencil lines in the bottom half, almost at the center of the painting. Notice how these lines now create shapes. The reason why is because these lines touch each other. They close the shapes. Henri Matisse developed a style of art making called paper cutouts, which he described as drawing with scissors. Matisse would cut shapes out of colored paper and arrange the shapes to form pictures. Notice how there are two motifs, reef-like and apple-like shapes, that the artist repeats, adding a little bit of variety. Besides these repeating shapes, there's a human-like organic shape that stands out in the top right side. This contrast gives emphasis to the human-like figure. Here is the artist's studio while he was living in Nice, France. Notice the contour lines on the wall and even the ceiling, as well as the shapes that come out of them. Notice also the paper cutouts on the wall. They go all the way up to the ceiling. Is this a painting, or is it a wallpaper already? Shape and human figure. The human figure is an enduring theme in the visual arts. Every human society has its own ways of representing the human figure. The earliest manifestations of figurative art have been traced back to a period called the Upper Paleolithic. The earliest depictions of anthropomorphic forms are simple stick figures with geometric-shaped bodies. This example of parietal art from East Kalimantan, Indonesian Borneo, dated between 13,600 and 20,000 BC, depicts humans as stick figures, with limbs and torso. Not unlike the petroglyphs that have been found all over Micronesia, such as those at the Obakalderol complex in Palau, human figures are depicted with triangular torsos, flexed legs and small feet, lacking heads and arms. Or depicted with rectangular torsos with stick limbs, splayed fingers and toes, as well as circular heads with facial features, as seen in Madelinium, Pohnpei. The oldest known hunting scene with a therianthrope figure is found in the famous shaft scene in Lascaux, France, dated between 17,000 and 15,000 BC. In the Paleolithic, the schematic representation of anthropomorphic shapes contrasts with the great attention to detail with which animals are usually depicted in parietal art. Likewise, proportion is subjective, and animals are usually given greater significance compared to humans. This shaft scene with a rhino, a duck, and a disemboweled auroch with a dying man is a good example of that. Notice the difference between how animals and the human-like therianthrope are depicted. By the way, therianthrope means a mythical being which is part human, part animal. In the next image, we have another example of parietal art, the Guion rock paintings, which are found at Kimberley, Western Australia, and were dated back to about 12,000 BC. They are also called the Bradshaw paintings. The difference in style between the human figures depicted in this art and the one at Lascaux's hunting scene couldn't be bigger. Compared with those, the Bradshaw paintings are naturalistic, as opposed to the schematic approach of the Lascaux painting. Human figure, style, and proportion. Children's drawings of human figures are also schematic. In fact, children up to 4 years old will invariably draw circles or tadpoles with attached limbs, some older children even drawing longer legs with arms attached to them. Only later will small children start drawing differentiated torsos, heads, and limbs. In realistic traditions, however, proportion is an important part of drawing. The same goes to the depiction of the human figure itself, because proportion helps artists determine how large to make the different parts of the body in relation to others. In art, the basic unit of measurement is the head, which is the distance from the top of the head to the chin. This unit of measurement is then used to establish the proportions of the human figure. How many head lengths the whole human body has is a convention that changes over time. In the 5th century BC, Polyclitus believed the perfect human proportions to be 7 times the height of the head, while Lysippus a century later made human figures slightly slenderer, adding 1 head height to the canon. In Vitruvian Men, Leonardo da Vinci applies the golden ratio in order to find out the ideal human proportions. The canon of human figure proportions changed quite a bit in 16th century Europe, as can be seen in this painting by Parmigianino. The proportions are outrageous. Human figures break the classical canon of between 7 and 8 head measurements. Although the style is realistic, the proportions are exaggerated for artistic reasons. Linear perspective also creeps into this painting even so slightly, with shapes at a greater distance, thus receding from the viewer, appearing smaller than those in the foreground. This is John Hebuterne with Yellow Sweater, 1918-19, by Amedeo Modigliani. Notice how elongated the human figure is, not unlike the human figures of Mannerist painter Parmigianino. And again, the same outrageous, almost boneless neck that we can find in Parmigianino's Madonna can be seen here in this young lady's portrait.